meantime, we're going to be talking about Manchester. There's some exciting things going on over there. And here to talk about that is Ahmed Martin. He is the Executive Director of the Manchester Citizens Corporation. Ahmed, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
What a conversation with those guys, huh?
Telling you.
They spin it around, don't they?
They got it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Manchester. I know that we're all familiar with it. It's got a tremendous history.
It does.
Let's talk about its history first and foremost, and then I know there's an event coming up and why, in fact, you're here tonight. But talk a little bit about Manchester, what it was, what it represents, and hopefully where it's going.
Okay. Manchester was founded in the 1800s. It started off as a small fishing town and all the industries that surrounded that in what is now Chateau West. 65 was built and divided Chateau from what is now known as Manchester, the residential part of Manchester.
Sure.
In the 1800s, with the growth of in the late 1800s, excuse me, with the growth of the steel mills and the factories, it grew into a burgeoning town center. The wealthy of Pittsburgh actually lived there. And was responsible for the large Victorian homes that we have there now.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Now that you said that, there's a Chateau Street exit when you're on 65. It popped right into my head, and maybe that's a great way for people to connect to exactly where we're talking about. But that history changed, and clearly you're right. That's where money was. That's where those big Victorian homes were. How did that get off the rails?
Well, it was directly related to the decline in the industries. In addition, the urban renewal program in the 1960s and 70s again divided the commercial section from Manchester, the commercial corridor, Chateau West, from the residential section.
Sure.
And the urban renewal program left 95% of the building stock in Manchester vacant or abandoned.
I see.
And so in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, that coupled with, I would say, some negative elements in the neighborhood led to the decline in Manchester.
Okay, we're going to get to that in just a moment. But the idea of the corporation came about in the mid-'60s.
Yes.
Neighborhood-based. Talk a little bit about the corporation.
Yeah, it was founded in 1965, responsible for sponsoring the historic designation of Manchester. And that was a strategic move in order to protect the buildings from being demolished through the urban renewal program. So the Manchester Citizens Corporation organized the community and sponsored this designation in order to stave off the demolition of the buildings through the urban renewal program. This meant that the government had to go through something called the Section 106 clearance, and they weren't doing that prior. So Manchester Citizens Corporation was able to hold them accountable to the letter of the law. And that way, they were able to start a comprehensive strategy, neighborhood-wide revitalization strategy, based around this historic designation and protecting these buildings. Okay,
so that's interesting. We had the unsavory characters that you mentioned and the impact that they had, as well as what happened with the division that you described. And that took us to a place where Manchester didn't want to be and away from its roots, so to speak.
Exactly.
However, you're looking forward, and we're going to talk a little bit more specifically to what with the Great House Sale. I want to hold that for one more segment. Talk about how your involvement came about.
I was recruited, I would say, from New Orleans, Louisiana. I was working in community economic development there. I was fortunate enough to work with a longtime consultant for the Manchester Citizens Corporation, Stanley Lowe. He introduced me to the board. The board actually came down to New Orleans to visit, tour the projects I was working on, and we just hit it off right away. Manchester is a genuine community-based organization. There's not a lot of nonprofits where the board is mandated to live within the community. And so it provides a certain richness and an institutional memory that I think a lot of community-based organizations lack.
How long have you been there?
I've been there 9 months. So
okay. All right, well, you're new at it, but you've got the passion, you have the ideas, and you have the event. We're going to tell you what that event is coming up in 2 minutes right here at Night Talk on PCNC. All right, everybody, welcome back. Our last chapter tonight, and we're having it with Ahmed Martin. He is the Executive Director of 9 months with the Manchester Citizens Corporation. Lauren has been putting up the graphic for the Great House Sale. What's that all about?
The Great House Sale is going to be, it's the second one. In 2009, we invited people to take a glimpse of the homes that are available in Manchester. Now, these were properties that weren't rehabilitated, so you had to use your imagination, if you will. You were allowed to put down $1,500. MCC, Manchester Citizens Corporation, managed the construction process. Once the building was finished and you could receive the as-is appraised value and go to the bank for financing, you could purchase the home.
I see.
So this Great House Sale is going to be two distinct factors. We're going to have homes that were completed via the 2009 process that are going to be staged, and you can tour and get an idea of the building finished product. So you can use less of your imagination, if you will. We're also going to be selling vacant lots and new construction models this year, and they're going to have a contemporary feel. So it will be able to complement the historic architecture that's already in the neighborhood, but if you're in the market for something different, we'll have that available as well.
And I know that part of the mission with MCC is to talk about the family nature of it, the family orientation that is there. You're trying to develop, extend, and ultimately have succeed, if you will. Right. The access to town. I mean, again, all the reasons that made it what it was.
Well, Manchester makes sense, as you mentioned, in terms of the community feel of it. People speak. There's these wide brick sidewalks, the proximity to downtown, and all the other amenities that come, a great school, great charter school in the area, Blue Ribbon School. But additionally, it makes sense financially. You're able to get a 10-year tax abatement, and for the new construction models, you can actually have a 3-year county tax abatement and a 10-year city tax abatement. In addition, over the last 5 years, sales prices in Manchester have appreciated over 200%.
So there's opportunities here.
Right. And the price per square foot is 25% lower than the city of Pittsburgh. So while your sales prices are appreciating, it costs less if you get in now.
That's a good way. Those are incentives and economic benefits associated with ultimately trying to redevelop the area, as you described it. And watching all these television shows my wife has on when I come home every night, there seems to be there's no shortage of how to get a fork and a pen and rebuild a house. So people could look forward to that as well.
Exactly.
Maybe that'll work in your favor. Ahmed, I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
It's going to be July 23rd and July 24th.
You know what? You took the words right out of my mouth. That's all right. We work as a team. We enjoyed it. And in fact, thank you, everybody out there. We had a great team behind the scenes who made this all happen tonight. George, back in the saddle again. Lauren, Courtney, and everybody else, and everybody who was part of the show tonight. Thanks so much for the privilege. And again, the great house sale, Saturday and Sunday, July 23rd and 24th. Get over there to Manchester. I'm Ellis Cannon. Have a great night. On behalf of PCNC, have a great night. God bless. Right.
Oh.